Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or if you are new here, hi. I have not uploaded a video since October, which I think since starting my YouTube channel over 4 years ago now, it's the longest I've ever gone without uploading. So for that, I apologize. I work at a boutique, if you do not know, Boutique 23, and holiday season in retail is literally crazy. And something about this year, it was just more exhausting than it has been. And so on my few days off that I get, I just wanted to relax. I didn't want to have to worry about filming or editing or doing anything. I just wanted to chill, relax, be with my family and my boyfriend. But I am back today. As you guys can see by the title, we are going to be going over my top 21 favorite books of 2021. I do have, you can't really see it, but it says books, books, and more books sweater on, which I thought was really cute for today's video. I do have my notebook here, which my boss gave me for Christmas last year, and I have written out my top 21 favorite books. All 21 of the books I did read this year. They didn't necessarily come out this year. I just personally read them this year, and I did give them all 5 stars. I did do monthly reading wrap-ups up until I think August was my last one, and most of those I did talk about these books more in depth. So if you want to hear that, you can definitely go check those out. But I'm not going to go too in depth in this video just because there is 21 of them and 10 of them are series, and so it's going to take me a while to get through. In total too, this year I did read 115 books. None of these are going to be in a particular order. I'm going to call them like 1, 2, 3, 4, but that is just my list that I have written down. They aren't my favorites in that particular order. A few of these are my like top favorites, and I will tell you that, but the rest of them are all kind of on like an even level. I couldn't rank them. So with that being said, number 1, we got the Stay With Me series by Nicole Fiorina, I think is how you say it. This series I've talked about a few times. It's a 3-book series and it's literally so good. Mia's from the US. She gets into some trouble, and so her dad sends her to this boarding school in the UK, and she meets Ollie there, and it's their story. The first one is more about Mia. The second one's more about Ollie. It's got kidnapping, murder, love. It's crazy, but it's so good. If you have not read this, you need to. Also, the covers are literally stunning. Like, they're so pretty. Next up, we have Archer's Voice by Mia Sheridan. This one, by far, top read of 2021. Nothing topped this. One other came close, and I will get to that. But this book holds such a special place in my heart. It is about Bree and Archer. Bree's kind of running away from her past, so she moves to a small town and she meets Archer in a parking lot, and she tries to make conversation with him, but he doesn't talk back, and so she gets confused as to why he's like ignoring her. So she starts asking around town. Turns out Archer is mute. He had an accident when he was little that hurt his vocal cords, so he's not able to talk. But Mia's dad was deaf, and so she knew sign language, and Archer learned sign language, but no one else knows it. So Bree is like the first person to talk to Archer in his language. But it's Bree and Archer's love story. It's so good. It's so much more than that though. Like, this is just another one. Like, you just gotta read it. You just gotta go read it. Next up, we have got the Mile High Club series from T.L. Swan. If you have not read this, you need to. This is like the first book that I've read that I've actually laughed like out loud because it was so funny. It is about the Miles brothers. They own Miles Media. But the first one, the characters meet on an airplane and they have a stopover. And then so they hook up on a stopover, the name. And then the girl actually goes in for a job interview, and the guy that she hooked up with was the guy interviewing her, the boss, the owner of the company. That's really good. And then the second one, Tristan, and I forget the girl's name. Part of his job is like going to other places and trying to buy the companies out to like redo them and then resell them, make money. And he's trying to do that with Claire. That's her name, Claire Anderson. And then they both end up at this conference, and then they kind of get together. She's also older than him in this, and she has kids. So that's really funny. When he meets the kids, if you read it, you know it's so funny. And then the last one just came out not too long ago, the Casanova. This is with Elliot and I think this is Kate. Elliot and Kate, I want to say. Kate works for him, and yeah, that's all I'm going to say. She works for him. It's really good. Next up, we got Verity by Colleen Hoover. This is the one I was talking about with Archer's Voice. That is like one of my top reads. This and Archer's Voice, best ones I've read in 2021, hands down. This book is crazy. Lowen gets a call to finish writing this book series that Verity has started, and she ends up going to Verity's house to go through her manuscripts in her office to get a better feel out of how to write this. But as she's doing it, she runs into some things that she's not supposed to see, and that's all I'm gonna say because you just need to go read it. It's literally crazy. This is my first like thriller type book that I've ever read, and I loved it. Okay, the next up is the series that I read on my Kindle, so I'm gonna scoot over a tad bit so I can put it on the screen right here. But it's the Elite Kings Club series by Emma Jones. So this is actually an 8-book series now. The last one actually came out today. So after I finish filming and editing this video, I'm gonna hop on my Kindle and read it. I need to know what happens. But it is about 3 different couples in the span of these 8 books. It's like a secret society slash different kind of world, kind of like in a mafia type thing. It's not the actual mafia, but like they do mafia like things. It's insane. It's crazy. I don't even know how to like talk about this besides not saying anything at all because it's crazy. The first one is called The Silver Swan. Then the second is The Broken Puppet. Third is I don't even know how to say it. It's on the screen, you can read it. So those are all Madison and Bishop's. And then we have Malum Part 1 and Malum Part 2, which is Nate and Tilly's books. And then Sainti Diaboli Part 1, I want to say is how you say it. And then Sainti Diaboli Part 2, which is Brantley and Saint's books. And then the last one is Ruined Castles, which goes back to Bishop and Madison. But all these books I gave 5 stars. They are so crazy. They keep you on your toes. A lot of books I can like go into and I can kind of guess what happens. But with these ones, I had no clue. I did not know what Emma was gonna come up with next. The next one I also read on my Kindle, so I will stay on this side, but it is Lawn Shot by Kennedy Ryan. This one is a part of a series of 3 books. I've only read the first one, but I am excited to read the next 2 because this book was so good. If you liked It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover, you would love this book. And it kind of has the same thing going on. I forget the main character's name, but she meets this other character, the boy, at a bar. They're talking basketball. He's like, wow, this girl knows her stuff. Turns out she's actually dating star of his rival team. Check trigger warnings because she is in an abusive relationship, and it's so heartbreaking to read, but it was done so well. It was so good. Next up is the Brutal Birthright series by Sophie Lark. I actually started this last week, so I flew through this. So this one is actually a mafia series. It's a 6-book series. It starts out with Brutal Prince. This one is with Ada and Callum. They're both from kind of rival families, and she ends up going to his house to crash his little sister's birthday party, and she ends up setting his library on fire. And so how their families decide to kind of make it even is for them to get married. So it starts off with them, and it goes through both of their siblings. The second book is called Stolen Heir. 3rd, Savage Lover. 4th, Bloody Heart. 5th, Broken Vow. And 6th is Heavy Crown. This book we have is Too Late by Colleen Hoover. This book is hardly ever talked about, but it is so good. This is one of her darker type of books. It's about Sloane. She is in a relationship with this guy named Asa. A-S-A is his name. And he runs this like drug ring around campus. They're in college. And then all of a sudden this guy named Carter shows up. People in the book don't know it, but we know it. He's an undercover cop trying to bust him. And Sloane ends up falling for Carter. And then Asa finds out, and it's crazy. This one I read in one sitting. I could not put it down. I don't know why people don't talk about this one as much, because it's really good. Moving back over, the next series is the Madison Kate series. If you don't follow Fit Teacher Rachel on Instagram or on TikTok, you need to. That's where I get a lot of my book recommendations from, and she has always hyped up the Madison Kate series, and so I knew I had to read it. So this series actually starts out by her getting framed for murder, which she did not commit. Someone was pretending to be her. So she went away for a little bit, and then when she comes back, she finds out that her dad is in a relationship with one of the guy's moms that she thinks framed her for murder. And so when she moves back home, these 3 boys are living in her house. Like, she has to live with the 3 boys that caused her to get in trouble for a murder she did not commit. I don't know if it's technically mafia, but like they do some sketchy things that they're not supposed to be doing. And it's so interesting. Like, she has a stalker. It's also reverse harem. And if you don't know what reverse harem is, it's where she falls in love with all of them. She doesn't pick one. She picks them all. Then next we got Most of All You by Mia Sheridan. This one I knew I had to read after I read Archer's Voice. I was like, I need to read all of Mia's books because she does the bad girl, good boy trope so good. And in this one, Gabriel, he was kidnapped when he was little, and so he has a lot of attachment issues. He needs to learn how to be intimate. So he goes to a strip club and he finds Crystal, and you can just tell like she's not meant to be there. And so they end up doing like little training sessions. Crystal's really not into it. But Gabriel is. He only wants Crystal to be in them, which Crystal ends up not being her real name because that's just her stripper name. And then this just goes over their relationship. It's so cute and so good. If you have not read anything by Mia Sheridan, I would say to start out with Archer's Voice and then definitely read this one next. We are halfway through my list at number 11. I think this series is in a lot of people's favorites this year. It has been going all around TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. And if you have not read it, this needs to be on your reading list for 2022. It's the Addicted and Calloway Sisters series. I have not actually finished it myself. I should say that. I still have one book left, and I've been putting off reading it because I don't want this world to end. But quickly, I'll kind of go over this. This is about Lily and Lo. Lo is addicted to alcohol. Lily is addicted to sex, and it is them coming over their addictions. People hate on Lily and Lo, and it makes me so mad because they are my favorite. Like, they have 5 books of them going through this traumatic stuff and coming out of it. It has the best character development I've ever seen, and it makes me so sad when people skip these books because they don't want to read about Lily and Lo. They're so good. You need to read them. So it starts out with Addicted to You, and then it goes into Ricochet, which is actually when Lo is in rehab and Lily is getting help with her family and friends, people around her. And then it goes Addicted for Now, which is Lo is out of rehab, and so it's him and Lily trying to figure out how to be with each other without alcohol and sex. But then after you read those 3, you jump into Kiss the Sky, which is Rose and Connor's first book. They actually get a reality show, and so that is what this one focuses on the most. And then next up you got Hot House Flower. This is with Daisy and Reich. Daisy is a model, so it starts out with her in Paris for Fashion Week. Something happens, Reich comes to the rescue, and then you jump back in to Lily and Lo, so you go to Thrive. This is on the same timeline as Kiss the Sky and Hot House Flower. You go to Addicted After All, which is Lily and Lo's last book and my favorite. I love this one. I'm not gonna say anything because you just need to read their happy ending. I'm not gonna spoil it for you right now. Then you go back into Rose and Connor in Fuel the Fire, and then same thing with Long Way Down. This is back to Daisy and Reich. Daisy gets some really sad news, and this book is very emotional, so be prepared for that. And then lastly, the thing that I have not read is Some Kind of Perfect, which is all of their epilogue novels, and this thing's huge. It is over 700 pages long. And I'm not mentally prepared to finish this yet. So maybe I'll slowly make my way through it in the new year. But if you have not read this series, you definitely need to. By far one of my favorite series of all times. The next book is Serenade and Heartbreak by Ella Fields. This one is a love triangle. I'm the kind of person that actually loves love triangles. I think they're fun to like guess who she's gonna be with. And so I really liked this book. It is between her first love, which he's actually a member of her brother's band like in high school, and then in time jumps to when she's in college and she falls for this cute baseball player. Well, then the other guy from high school comes back, and it's just like a back and forth. And every time she was with a different guy, I was like, oh my gosh, has to be him, and then she'd go back to the other one and I'd be like, nope, him, he's perfect. And then a huge plot twist happens, and you just gotta read it. It's so good. I know this is on Kindle Unlimited too. I just had to buy the paperback once again because it's literally stunning. Moving back over, because the next series I read on my Kindle, but I do want to buy it in paperback because I loved it, and it's The Maid series by Daniel Laurie. So the first one is called The Sweetest Oblivion, and it's with Nico and Elena. This one is an arranged marriage. Nico is actually supposed to marry Elena's little sister, but something happens where she can't marry him, and so Elena ends up marrying him. And then the second one is The Maddest Obsession. This is with Christian and Gianna. Gianna was actually Nico's stepmom. She was married to his dad. Well, then he died, and so she got married to a different guy, and then he died. And then she meets Kristen. He's like an FBI agent, but like a dirty one. He's on like the mafia side, which I don't think I said that this is a mafia series. And then she ends up falling for Christian. That's all I'm gonna say about it. And then the third is The Darkest Temptation. This is about Mila and Ronan. and Mila is from Moscow, Russia, and she goes there and she accidentally gets kidnapped by Ronan, and then she falls for her kidnapper. And there's actually a 4th book coming out, I think this year. Let me see, does it say the name? The Purest Addiction. Then we have One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This is another love triangle, but it has a twist to it. So she marries her high school sweetheart, and then he goes missing in a plane accident. They think he's dead. And so she ends up reconnecting with this boy that used to work at her parents' music shop back when she was in high school, Sam. They end up getting engaged, like they're happy together. Well, then Jesse shows up. He's not dead. He was alive the past few years that everyone's thought he's been dead. Emma has to make a choice between her fiance or her husband. This one I read in one sitting and I could not put it down. It was so good. I needed to find out who she was gonna pick, and I think she picked the right guy. In the end, that's who I would have picked too. Then we got the Mr. series by T.L. Swan. This one starts out with Mr. Masters. This girl kind of needs a break, and so she applies to be a nanny. She was thinking it was for some girl, but it turns out it was for a widowed man. And he's hot, and he's kind of old. I shouldn't say old, probably in like his 40s, but like, you know, she's in her 20s. And there was parts in this book that I cringed. Like, I had secondhand embarrassment for her, but it was still really good. It's hilarious. Like I said, T.L. Swan's books are so funny, but they're so spicy too. And then the second one in this series is Mr. Spencer. This one's actually kind of interesting because he ends up getting with this girl who's like kind of royalty. I don't know her exact title, but she's very sheltered. She shouldn't date anyone who's not royalty, and so it was very fun to read that. I've never read anything like that before. And then the third one, Mr. Garcia. This one actually came out a few months ago, but this girl works as a barista and she can't make coffee. Like, it's horrible tasting, but this guy keeps coming back to get the coffee. Something happens where he has a misunderstanding that he thought his son was dating her, and so they don't talk for a while. Well, then she becomes a lawyer, I'm pretty sure. I don't know what they call it in the UK, like a senator here, like that kind of higher up power type of thing. And she ends up being like on his team. So they reconnect. They figure out that it was a misunderstanding all those years ago. The next one is Sicko by Amo Jones. This one is crazy. This was my first Amo Jones book I ever read, and a lot of people either love it or they hate it, but I loved it. So this girl is adopted into this family, and her foster brother is a few years older than her, and then one day he just disappears, and she's like, where did he go? Turns out he joined a motorcycle game, and his new name is Sicko. She ends up going to college, and then that's when he returns back into her life, but some sketchy stuff is going on in her life, so it's like a good thing he showed up when he did. This is another kind of like secret society type of thing that's going on. It's crazy. You just gotta read it. Next up, we have the Kings of Quarantine series. I read this really fast, even though the books are super duper thick. It was actually really interesting to read because obviously COVID's going on right now, but in this book it's a little bit different because they're like secluded at this prep school, and then the main character's dad is actually the one who supposedly let out this virus to the world, but one of the kids' moms actually passed from this virus that's happening, and so him and his friend group hate this girl. They do not like Tatum. They do unspeakable things that when I was reading them, I actually was like, oh my god, like, what did they just do to this poor girl? It gets better as it goes along. And it's a reverse harem. The first book is Kings of Quarantine, second is Kings of Lockdown, third is Kings of Anarchy, and fourth is Queen of Quarantine. We're getting down to the end of this is my number 18th, and it is 11 Other Words by Christina Lauren. I'm mad at myself that I waited so long to read this because it was so good. It is about Macy and Elliot. Macy's mom passed away, and her one thing was that her dad needs to get her somewhere where she can go and just escape. So they get this house in a few towns away, and her neighbor is Elliot, and so she spends her summers with them. They love reading. She has a little closet full of books. They always read in there. Well, they end up falling for each other. This goes between then and present. The more you read, you learn more, but they lose contact, and then they end up meeting, I think 11 years later, and they run into each other at a coffee shop. Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything else because you need to read it. This is my first ever Christina Lauren book, and I'm so glad I started with this one. Next up is another recent read for me. I read these a few weeks ago, and it is Full Tilt and All In by Emma Scott. The only book I've ever really cried while reading was A Thousand Boy Kisses by Tilly Cole, which almost made it on this list. It didn't. I did do a whole reading vlog on that though, so if you want to see me cry in my reaction, you can definitely go check that out. But this book had me bawling. It's about Casey and Jonah. Casey's in this band and Jonah's a limo driver, and so he has to take her home. Can't get into the house, so he ends up taking her back to their apartment, and they just kind of click. Jonah ends up having a heart condition where he knows he doesn't have long to live. He only has months. So this whole book, you know what's coming. Like, you know he's gonna die at the end of it, which is horrible. It says on the back. I'm not spoiling anything. And Casey sticks by him. She's like, I understand that, but I want to be with you. Well, at the end of this book, he passes. Before he died, though, he made her promise that she would love again. So an all in is her finding love again, which I didn't really like the person that she picked, but then it grew on me. I was like, okay, I see it, I understand. This was so sad, but so good. My last standalone that I have for this video is Layla by Colleen Hoover. If you know me in real life, you know I love Ghost Adventures. That's like my favorite show to watch. Me and Easton watch it all the time. Or like Sam and Colby videos, any like ghost hunting type of thing. I don't know, it just interests me. I really like it. And this is my first paranormal romance I've ever read. It's about Leeds and Layla, and they meet at her sister's wedding. A few years down the line, Layla gets into an accident and she's just not herself. And so Leeds takes her back to the place they met, which is like this little bread and breakfast type of hotel type of thingy, to try to like re-get her memories back. And he discovers something else, something paranormal. And that's all I'm gonna say, because I'm not gonna ruin this. You just need to go read it. Literally any Colleen Hoover book, so good. I read a lot of her books back in 2020, and so I was sad I could not include them in this video, because like I said, all her books are just amazing. And then the very last series that was my favorite of 2021 is the Royal Elite series by Rena Kent. This one actually starts with Cruel King, which is like number 0. I didn't read it. I didn't even know it was a thing until after I finished the whole series, and then I'm like, I'm not going back. But it starts out with Deviant King, which is number 1. That's where I started. And it is about Elsa, which is cool. She's blonde and her name is Elsa. How cute. And Aiden. And this series, if you liked the Elite Kings Club series by Emma Jones, this is similar but kind of toned down just a notch. Not as crazy. It's still crazy, but not as crazy, you know? On Elsa's first day of school, Aiden sees her and he's like, stay away from me or I will ruin your life. Well, then they end up falling for each other, you know? Of course they gotta do that. And so it's their love story and kind of finding out why Aiden doesn't like Elsa, why he said that to her. And when you like figure it out and it tells you, it's crazy. Like, I didn't see it coming. I did not see it coming. But they are the first 3 books, which is Deviant King, Steel Princess, and Twisted Kingdom. Then it goes into Black Knight, which these next few books are all going to be about side characters in the first 3 books. This one is about Kimberly and Xander. And then there's Vicious Prince, which is Ronan and Teal. And then Ruthless Empire, which is going to be Whole and Silver. And then the last one is the Royal Elite Epilogue, and it's just like all their epilogues at the very end. And that is my 21 favorite books of 2021, which is actually more than 21 because I did series under like 1 book. But I was like, you know, same thing. I was gonna do a series video and then a standalone video, but I ran out of time. Today's the 31st, and so I was like, I'm just gonna combine them, add another thing, make it 21 books of 2021, and here we are. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Be sure to let me down below what your favorite book of 2021 is. I love watching these kind of videos. I've been watching them the past few days and I've been getting so many new book ideas for what I want to read in the new year. I will have my Goodreads link down below too, so if you want to follow along and see what I've read or what I've read in the past, you definitely can go check that out. I hope you guys all have a happy and safe New Year's, and I will see you guys later. Bye.